While most of the world can barely manage one writing system, the Japanese are juggling three. A linguistic love triangle that somehow works. Technically, it's one writing system with three scripts, if you're being pedantative. But how did this happen? And why does it actually make sense for them to keep it this way? And what the heck is hentai gana? The earliest things the Japanese wrote were fake. Digger scientists have dug up these Japanese made bronze mirrors that had what looked like Chinese characters carved on them, if the carver were drunk and illiterate. The grammar was wrong, characters were flipped backwards, and the sentences were often nonsense. So, what was the deal with these mirrors? Well, real Chinese mirrors did come to Japan, and they were precious. Taking a cue from future China, the ancient Japanese thought precious things should be imitated. Japanese craftsmen made knockoff Chinese mirrors, copying the designs and even the text that were often written on these things. Unfortunately, they didn't know Chinese words. They didn't even know Japanese words. There weren't any. So, on mirrors and other objects, illiterate craftsmen inscribed what they thought Chinese writing looked like. It's a technique we still use today for many languages. Often, they treated text as decorations rather than communication. It was later in the early 400s that the Japanese gave words the respect they deserved. The Korean kingdom of Baekje started sending over Chinese books, and, more helpfully, people who could read them. At first, the only folks who wrote Chinese were professional scribes, human copy and pasters. But in the 500s and 600s, as Chinese culture immigrated to Japan in search of new opportunities, people thought this practice of putting marks onto flat surfaces could come in handy. The first type of writing educated nobles learned was kangbun, which just means Chinese writing, and they used it in official documents, records, and even poetry. They loved it. The only thing the Japanese loved more than learning Chinese was not learning Chinese, if they could help it. So they immediately started the ingenious and slightly unhinged process of coming up with ways to read Chinese in a Japanese way, called kangbun kundoku. It means literally Chinese writing, Japanese reading. First, they read Chinese characters, or kanji, using the Japanese spoken word for that character. It'd be like whenever I see the Chinese character shang, which means this thing, I would read it as mountain instead of shang. Secondly, they started adding tiny doodles around Chinese characters to help people read. These could get complicated. Japanese has different grammar. So, for example, this system puts dots at different places around the character to tell you things like this is the subject of the sentence, or this one's the object, or there's a particle that follows, things like that. Chinese doesn't have many of the particles that Japanese has. The Japanese thought Chinese word order was all backwards. Chinese typically uses subject-verb-object order. So in classical Chinese, you might have this sentence. It means, I beat son. A perfect sentence for letting someone know how you performed while playing chess with your son. But Japanese uses subject-object-verb order. Instead of saying, I beat son, if you were Japanese, you'd say, I son beat, which sounds like you got a beating in the head yourself, but is actually the most common language word order in the world. Or as the Japanese would put it, Japanese in the world most commonly use word order uses. Japanese weird is not. It normal is, actually. When faced with a Chinese sentence like this, one popular reading technique was to slip in a re mark between the last two characters, which told the reader to flip the two characters to properly read it the Japanese way. They used a bunch of other marks to shift the word order around until it's unrecognizable. This is the final reading order for this sentence. There were other markings to add pauses, help pronunciation, and change verb tenses, because Chinese lacks verb tenses too. Many different techniques popped up. Temples and sects started making their own systems. Some might have even guarded them like state secrets. Kanbun originally just meant Chinese writing, but nowadays it also means a category of writing systems that uses techniques to help read Chinese. Japan wasn't alone in this linguistic gymnastics routine. Countries around China, like the Korean kingdoms and Vietnam, also had ways to read Chinese in their own languages. The Koreans would have taught the Japanese to do this when they brought over Chinese texts. Kanbun kundoku, reading Chinese in a Japanese way, helped lead the way to actual Japanese writing. Once people started reading kanji with the Japanese spoken word, they just reversed it and wrote Japanese spoken words with the same kanji. By the mid 600s, people were scribbling away like their essays were due the next day. Writing had become widespread among the Japanese elite. People could finally write in their shipping addresses to get deliveries from Tokyo Treat and Sakurako, the sponsor for this video. I don't think this is going to work. It'll work. They may be aliens, but even they can't resist these snacks. This is Tokyo Treat, the service that sends you a monthly box of mouth-watering snacks straight from Japan. The theme for this month is Mount Fuji in the fall. You can taste Japan's crisp mountain air with treats like these. They even have ramen and these strawberry white chocolate crunkies that make me feel like I'm flying in the clouds, which makes sense because I'm in space. And just to seal the deal, we have a box of Sakurako, an even more premium service from local Japanese snack makers. This month's theme is the wonders of Nagano, a place snuggled in the Japanese mountains. Not only do you get snacks, but also some tea, and this month a cute little plate to put your treats in. Check out the link in the description for a discount. I have a bad feeling. Look, I say when we meet the Krogan leader, we blast him and be done with it. I don't trust them. They're going to invade Earth either way. We can't change orders now. The UN gave us a clear mission. Listen, once they realize how delicious Earth snacks are, they'll want trade instead of war. They can trade my ass. Screw the UN. We have to hit them first. We can't mess this up. I have a wife and kid. The UN! Screw the UN! The UN! Screw the UN! Okay, stop. We'll do it your way. But don't say I didn't warn you. The people of Earth present you this gift. A symbol of our goodwill and desire for cooperation. Where did the snacks go? I, ate them. You what? I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. I warned you they were so delicious. Click on the link in the description and use code Linfamy to get a discount on your first box now. People love them as gifts. The next breakthrough came in the 600s, maybe even earlier, when people thought, rather than writing kanji, why don't we just make up an alphabet for all the Japanese sounds? That way, we can just write directly what comes out of our mouths. And so, Manyogana was born. Technically not an alphabet, but a syllabary. Basically, each character in a syllabary stands for a syllable or sound. Manyo comes from the Manyoshu, the oldest Japanese poetry collection. Much of it uses this writing system, and gana, or kana, just means a Japanese syllabary. Now, when you want to create a new writing system, you can do it the hard way or the lazy way. The hard way is to make up the characters yourself. The easy way is to steal someone else's characters. Most countries around China tapped the second option, including Japan. Manyogana used Chinese characters not for their meaning, but for their sounds. So Japanese words were made by sounding out Chinese. The Japanese didn't think of the idea themselves. The Koreans had already experimented with this in their own languages, and they passed on the idea to Japan. The Korean kingdoms and Japan even use many of the same Chinese characters. Baekje introduced Chinese writing to Japan, which means initially the early Japanese didn't even know what Chinese sounded like. They were going around pronouncing Chinese with the Baekje accent. By this point, it's obvious that Baekje played a huge role in the early development of writing in Japan. The Japanese did do something totally new, though. They wrote long works of literature only using a syllabary, using the sounds. While on the continent, people used a mix of sound writing and meaning writing. Manyogana was pretty cool because you could express the Japanese language directly on the page. But there was a problem. It was painful to write. The Chinese had it better because usually each character stood for one concept, one word. In Manyogana, a word can stretch across multiple syllables, each with its own complex character. People died of old age halfway through arigatou gozaimasu. When I was a kid, my dad forced me to fill pages and pages with English words to improve my handwriting. Over time, my writing did change, not for the better. The words just got bigger and more spaced apart. I thought I was clever until I met Dad's discipline hand. The point is, when people have to write a lot, they tend to take shortcuts. In the late Nara period, people started simplifying these Manyogana characters to save wrist pain, eventually leading to some scripts you may be familiar with. Katakana came out of the great simplification. It means partial or fragmented kana, because most katakana scripts came from a piece of Manyogana, and because people said, I like writing, just not that much. It started out as little marks you put next to kanji to help people read. Then these tiny annotations got ideas and grew into a whole syllabary, like a child who graduated college, then took your job. The other kana, hiragana, means plain kana. The legend is that the famous Buddhist priest Kukai invented it, and like many great legends, its relationship with the truth is similar to the relationship between a daughter and an absent father. Hiragana didn't come from any one person or group, it arose gradually from cursive manyogana. Not only did cursive look better and allow you to write multiple characters without lifting the brush, it also allowed the page to have a nice, continuous massage instead of getting combo punched all the time. Many of these simpler shapes could be found in Chinese cursive. The new scripts on the block were not separate at first. A single piece of literature could have hiragana, katakana, and manyogana scripts all mixed together in a harvest festival party. All three were used throughout the medieval period. Writing in pure kana was popular for a while, but in the Heian period, people started writing in a mixed way. The practice of making doodles around kanji for Japanese grammar evolved into just including the doodles as part of the sentence. They started writing mostly kanji, with usually katakana for the grammatical parts. By the medieval period, this fusion style dominated literature writing, replacing kana writing. Okay, so what's hengtai-gana? As time went by, kana characters multiplied. One sound could be written in many different ways. Every book looked like an octopus had fallen into an ink pot and started wriggling around on the pages. This chaos continued until the elementary school order of 1900, when the government got tired of weeping school children and said, enough! Now each sound gets only one hiragana and one katakana, period. That's a circle. This law and another script reform in 1946 made canon the sets of hiragana and katakana marks that we still use today. All the characters that didn't make the cut, the failures, became known as hengtai-gana, because they then had nothing to do but sit at home and watch hentai. It actually just means variant kana. Anyways, the modern Japanese writing system grew out of not hiragana or katakana, but that mixed fusion writing style from the Heian and medieval periods. The difference now is there are more words spelled out in kana, and hiragana replaced katakana as the default kana. Today, katakana is used to write foreign words, onomatopoeias, and technical words. It's also used to emphasize things. When you need something loud, that's katakana, like writing in italics or caps lock. Hiragana is used for grammatical elements and native words. Kanji is also used for native words and Chinese loan words. Now you might ask, why not ditch the kanji and just write everything in hiragana so people don't have to learn 2,000 characters and have 20 different ways to read a kanji? And the answer is, kanji makes reading easier. That's right, because 1, Japanese has a small number of sounds. There are a ton of different words that are written the same way in hiragana. For example, this is kami or kami. It could mean God, kami, or paper, kami, or hair, kami. The gods could really get confused while listening to your prayers, or the paper could get confused, or maybe your hair is confused, I'm not sure, but writing kanji makes it super clear. 2, Japanese doesn't use spaces between words. So hiragana only writing ends up looking like a long string of noodles you have to spend time separating into words to consume. It's like trying to read this. The kanji kind of acts like punctuation, helping you navigate the sentence. And 3, once a person has mastered enough kanji, it's way faster to read and scan things. It takes up less space, 1 or 2 characters per word instead of multiple. So, keeping the current system is pretty beneficial. With all this thought put into the Japanese language, you would think we'd be calling the country by the right name. But why is Japan called Japan instead of Nihon? Click here to see the winding history of Japan's name. We have a new emperor on Patreon today, Adam Newsom. Thanks so much, Adam. Good luck in California. We have some regular members, Jackdaw Cry, Roseboy, Joyce Sarah, Adamus Lux, and Rishab Daga. You're all awesome. All right, I love you and spread the knowledge.